Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene. This week we're going to be talking about education. We have a special guest host today, our in-house education guest speaker, and we're going to be talking about education and its relationship to a future that is beautiful, sustainable, and tactile that we will refer to as the Solacene throughout the episode. I'm Alicia.
I'm VANJA.
That's Aaron over there on the other side of the room.
I'm quiet today, but hey everyone.
Hey. I guess you probably know me and Aaron, hopefully, or you can go back and listen to one of the many episodes of us talking. But Vanya, would you mind introducing yourself quickly before we get going?
Sure. My name is VANJA, or VANJA, or VANJA, whatever. And I met you through an event that I was hosting, and actually no, I found Solacene through a poster, and it was in my ear holes, and it was just the best, and then I met you through an event.
It's okay, I feel like I've met most of my friends through posters.
Yeah.
Solacene Recommends of the Week, put up a poster, and then maybe you'll make some new friends around your city.
Yes.
Our extensive marketing budget.
Yeah.
Yes. Who am I? And currently I'm a student at McGill studying climate change education, and we also co-organize the summer circles. That's all you get to know for now.
Yeah, I feel like we'll reveal ourselves throughout the episode. No spoilers.
And we're going to start off the episode with a petite icebreaker, courtesy of Vanya's Climate Connects deck of cards, which is a cool project, which I've never actually partaken in, but Alicia's told me all about, so
yeah,
we're going to do that.
Okay, so there's 4 levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start on the 4th level, which isn't deep. It's shallow.
Yes, the shallow level.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be lighthearted, little get to know you questions.
Perfect.
But in relation to the environment.
Cool. And we'll also let you two get to know each other a little more, because I feel like that's important for a good conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the first one. If you could be any plant based on how you feel right now, what would you be?
This reminds me of a question that Alicia and I always used to ask each other. Do you know what I'm going to say? Every time we were out and about, I would say, make a sound right now that represents how you'd feel.
Oh, that's cute.
And it'd always go oh.
You were so nervous on our dates.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
But I'm envisioning one of those really swirly flowers in the sky in SpongeBob, which is really the sea or the ocean, which I think is just coral, which is not a plant at all, but they look like flowers, so I'm going to say that.
They look like flowers in
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
a really
good.
good feeling. I don't know if I've ever felt that good in my life.
No, it's my baseline.
Good. I'm happy for you. Okay, what about you?
I feel like a little sunflower.
Okay.
I feel like I'm just kind of turning my head to what feels good, and that's just kind of how I feel right now.
That's what sunflowers do.
Yeah.
I like that. I kind of feel like grass. Grass is a plant.
Yeah.
I
He's a fictional bubble thing.
Yeah, it's true.
SpongeBob.
I can use grass.
You can use grass.
Feeling fresh.
Ooh.
I think we were talking
nice.
this morning about haircuts too. Some kind of
Chia.
cut the grass.
Cut the grass. I think that's what fall's about.
It's true.
Letting some stuff go, feeling fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Next question. Do you have a favorite body of water?
It's a tough one.
It is
Do you
kind
go
of
with
tough.
something you have a personal attachment to, something that's
Yeah.
always been an aspiration that I want to dip my... Because when we went to the Mediterranean, I'm going to say that, the Mediterranean Sea,
Okay.
because I felt it was strangely esoteric spiritual cleansing when I first touched it. I don't know why.
You're connecting with the things and all the stories that you read and stuff.
Sure. Odysseus.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Very humble.
I think mine's a personal one. I like the Pacific Ocean. It's big. It's the biggest.
Yeah.
It's also where I happen to grow up near.
It's very nice.
And I feel like every time I go in, I just feel very held. It feels very familiar. The salt is great. It's cold. I don't know. I'm just describing most
Describing
oceans.
it very academically. Great salinity, great temperature.
Yeah, it's
pH?
just-
Are you
pH.
kidding me?
You know what? We are known for, especially I grew up downtown Vancouver, for some E. coli. So that's not the greatest. But check before you go.
Yeah.
And it's a great experience every time.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I will choose the East River, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
Closest to me, within walking distance. And it's a bit mythological to me because my mom always talked about when she grew up that she would go swimming in it. But when I was young, it was so polluted that you couldn't swim in it. So I just was always like, ew, gross. Like, yucky, it smells green.
Yeah.
But then in, like, middle school, I went on a tour of, like, the water for the whole town comes from this river, of, like, where they clean it and stuff. And they were like, oh, we're working on, like, cleaning it up. And then my last couple years living at home, it was clean enough that we could go kayaking and swimming in.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool, and, like, it feels very teen movie whenever I'm back there and go swimming in it, because you just, like, walk a few minutes from the house, go down under a bridge, and then you're just, like, in this little oasis, and no one else swims there, because I don't think many people had that, like, goal in their head the way that I had in my head of, like, I need to swim there someday. So that's my favorite body of water.
Really outing your entire, like, childhood home.
Yeah, people will be able to try, like, people who play GeoGuessr will be able to find it on a map.
East River.
Yeah, but it's probably a lot of
Yeah,
East
there's a lot of
Rivers.
East Rivers.
That's
Yeah,
why
okay.
I felt fine saying it.
Okay.
This week's episode is kind of like a retroactive contribution to the education semester, I think, because we covered lots of things that semester, but we wanted to get more opinions.
Yeah.
That's kind of why we're doing this, like, third guest thing, to kind of fill in some blanks and just keep adding to the conversation. So, the first question is, in your ideal world, what role would technology play in education?
I had so many thoughts for this question that I actually struggled to organize them or write them all. So I kind of started to think, not in terms of, like, what should there be, but kind of how do we limit what there is or what there can be, because the internet is such a, like, wonderful kind of repository of information, and it's so free and kind of complete, that it really is probably, like, objectively, like, the best educational tool, like, ever invented, or, like, it's a great resource anyway. But obviously it's having kind of unlimited access to in the classroom doesn't seem to work very well. And I was kind of thinking, like, why that is, and the best way I could kind of phrase it, and in the classrooms that I enjoyed being in and felt were educational, and the ones that I didn't, that I felt that internet was more of a distraction, is to say that I think when you're in the classroom for those 50 or 60 minutes or 2 hours, it should feel as much as possible like there's no world outside the classroom. You know what I mean? Like, you should feel, that's how I always felt when I was in grade school anyway, because it was really before we had phones, and even then, like, I was late to get a phone, so it just felt like that was the only world there is like the 20 or so students in there and the teacher, and what the teacher's saying is the only thing that's being said, or at least that I can hear anyway. So I think that's kind of my starting point for technology's role in the classroom, or digital technologies. It's like, it should still try and create this atmosphere of, like, a closed off world. That's my first thought.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Because you're so right. In elementary school, it was like, I remember even when you would watch a video or there'd be technology, it would be like, you'd never seen it before. It was so exciting.
Yeah.
It was like a TV, and it would be like this.
They roll it out,
It was terrible quality, and it would
Yes.
always take, like, 20 minutes to make it work, but it was still the most exciting thing you'd ever seen for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it, like, even for the worst, that feeling of it being, there's nothing outside of this, because, like, when I started to reach high school, and especially in undergrad, I'd be like, oh, 1 hour, you know, whatever. Don't even really have to pay attention during the lectures, and then it's over before you know it. But when you're in grade school, it feels like such a long time. It feels like such a long class and like such a long day. But I think that's a good thing for making the concepts stick, which is kind of the whole point of education. So
I don't know. I like that answer, but I feel like I had such an opposite thought.
okay.
Well, I just feel like there's no, in an ideal world, or like in the Solacene in some ways, there's no going back. So I was kind of thinking through, like, what is ideal technology if it is in the classroom and if we don't limit it. And I thought about how much more embodied I want technology to be. I feel like technology, as we use it, makes you so small. Like, it's on your phone. Like, it literally, like, physically crunches you up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking if there was use in technology, it would be kind of, like, bigger. Like, I don't know, like, the screens would be bigger, or it would be like a hologram or something that can kind of mimic the way that we use our body in regular physical life and then what that does to learning. So in my Solacene we have maybe not bigger screens, but just like a use of technology that more emulates how we move, because the way that we use technology now is so makes us so scrunched.
Yeah, I think it's also, like, I always just remember everyone like stealing glances at their phones underneath their desks or whatever.
Yeah.
In high school, and it's that, like, I guess I like that really private thing that is also not good, because then everyone's in their own little world maybe.
Yeah, and like when I was thinking of the classroom, I also was thinking, like, is a classroom outside instead of inside, or like the classroom, there's a lot more trust in students, so that's why this technology can kind of be more embodied, because we trust them to not, like, it's so normalized in a way that we're not just like stealing time away from our teacher, it's actually like giving life to some learning. So yeah,
that's a super cool idea. I feel like I landed somewhere in the middle, which is good, because we didn't prepare together. But I was thinking, a lot about how in the Solacene people would be more like literate with technology, so it wouldn't just be this sort of outlet that we have for entertainment, or you wouldn't feel the need to be entertained in class outside of what's going on, because the teachers would have the resources that they need to make the lessons engaging. And maybe that is technology. Like, I think of the smart boards that we had installed like halfway through education, which is kind of cool. It's like big collective at the front of the classroom, and people could interact with it, and then like the notes would be saved, which I think is a cool sort of interactive thing that everyone could see.
Do you have any smartboard memories where you're like, this was useful?
No.
I have one that just came to mind, which is when in grade 7 or 8, I think, when we were learning about VANJA. And the teacher had them all, like the consonants as like jigsaw puzzles on the smartboard, and like I went up and had to drag them in as if it was like a jigsaw all together.
Okay.
Which is something that I'm just thinking about, because most often it was pretty much just an electronic chalkboard where they'd be writing. And it was good because they were saved, like you said. But like functionally it wasn't that different from a chalkboard, but like those kind of big experiences, I guess, are unique to that.
For sure.
I said it to Alicia before, I think maybe even on the podcast, but one of the most kind of memorable technology in the classroom moments I had where I was like, this is really cool, was in a course I was taking about ancient and medieval theatre, and it was about like theatre in ancient Athens. And the teacher he basically just loaded or opened up an Assassin's Creed game, like a video game that was set in ancient Greece, and like Ubisoft had pretty faithfully represented or like recreated what the city looked like at the time. So we were learning about like there was a theatre here, and there was an agora here, and like, this is where the actors went, and he was actually like walking around it, and I still remember it. So yeah, those really vivid kind of emulations, which aren't quite possible with textbooks. That's also unique to technology, so that's also an answer that I have.
Very cool.
But then it also makes me kind of fearful for like VR uses in the classroom. Like, that's not the Solacene that I envision, because it's like, it's really cool to be able to like walk around. And like,
I think it was more that he was just playing it on the screen, but we were all watching it.
Okay, yeah.
It's like, I don't like the idea of everyone being closed off like that either.
No. But yeah, I like that.
I just have this kind of unfounded, honestly, belief that it will never catch on. I think it's pretty unfounded, though.
What will never catch on?
Like VR.
Oh, okay.
And that it will not be used in schools, and that phones will kind of go away. Because I feel like people are getting sick of them. Like, almost everybody I know, when they're on TikTok or anything, they're like kind of grossed out with themselves while doing it. Like, there's a self-awareness that's like, I think, increasing, and a desire for people to be more
I think that's the impact of Solacene. I think we're having that
we're
effect.
single-handedly doing that. It's not just human nature. I had another thought about technology in the classroom, and it was more about the internet and how I think in the Solacene, because the schools will be like the center of the communities, and like therefore I think receive support from everyone who's in the community and funding and everything, it would enable the teachers to, I guess I already said this a little bit, but like be cooler than Bill Nye, or like it'd be the teachers' jobs perhaps to synthesize what's on the internet and bring it to the students. This is like in elementary and high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the internet is like super important. It was like invented kind of for this like transmission of ideas, and like I wouldn't want that to ever go away.
Of course not.
No.
But I think maybe for the first like 6 years of school, it shouldn't be the kid's job to just hop onto Google Scholar.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the teacher's job can be to bring it to them, and at the same time maybe be bringing them the tools of how to do it themselves. And then when they reach a certain point, they can be trusted with it
Yeah.
Mm.
to go out and like.
It's
Yeah.
hard now because technology is changing year by year. That what kids are taught about how to access information is like, by the time they finish school, it's no longer in date. Like we were kind of taught never trust Wikipedia,
Right.
and now it's like actually it's pretty good. If even
Yeah.
just to find sources, we scroll to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in the future, that period at the start of one's education, when you're learning about how to trust sources and how to procure information, and in the future, like how to detect what was written by a human and these kind of things, will become more relevant. And also, something I didn't like about our education was that they were still trying to teach us that in university. And it's like you should kind of have this trust that, like that should be kind of what the first 12 years I think of schooling are for.
It's true.
I also had a thought, kind of back to the smartboard capturing for classroom technology, like the use of technology is an almost like archival tool for tracking learning. And like, I don't know, I just wanted to ask, like, is that something that you think would be good? Like, would you want to see all these different points in your life where you're like, I didn't know that at this age, and then at this age I knew it? Like, could technology kind of like become to a point where you can kind of see this like learning journey in whatever subject, or you can kind of pick what you even want to like track? Like, I imagine being 8 years old and being like, I want to know if I know much about fashion when I'm like 20.
Okay.
And then like being able to use technology as a tool to track that journey. I don't know, this is a very out of left field thought, but
That's super. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. Or even digitizing your work.
right.
Because some of it that we have is on file, because like I still have some emails archived where I've like sent in a last minute assignment from high school from my phone or something on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
But anything before that was just kind of lost to time, like on paper. So yeah, it would be neat to at least have some kind of record of that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea though. Even just like if you could log things of like, I want to keep this drawing that I did, or like I want to keep this essay, like lock it in.
Yeah, because we have that when you're a child, like your parents keep the like
Yeah.
random sketch or a random thing when you're in grade 2, but then there's this like 10 years that are lost because you're kind of too old, or like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, I think it would just be nice to be able to see, and also for like people who have different like needs, be able to track how they're learning even if it's not in the norm of learning.
For
Or
sure.
also, what about in high school and university when you would check the course website to see your percentage, like your grades and that kind of stuff? If you could see that over time. I remember there was a period where I was really obsessively like refreshing it to see if grades would get uploaded. Like, oh, I got a
Right.
92, and I'd know it before I even went to school the next day.
Wow.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
yeah.
Nerd.
You kind of done like that. But not just the numbers about how you do. It could be like somehow using programs. Oh, here's how your vocabulary has expanded over time, or I don't know. Here's how your like logic has improved from year to year, or something like that. I'm thinking about how if you play a game of online chess, the website will analyze it for you immediately afterwards, and you can see where you made mistakes and your percentage accuracy. So like 100% accuracy is like, this is exactly what the computer would have recommended for each move. So you're obviously going to be less than that, but it's like you can learn from. That's how technology can kind of really, in a concrete way, like help you improve, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Or even just like track how you're like improving naturally, so to speak. Like I think having some sort of reflection piece.
Okay, the next question is, how can informal and formal education better coexist and complement one another?
I was thinking about this. I was kind of trying to define informal education, and something that's been on my mind recently is how we feel like once you are not in class or like in school anymore, we feel like we're not learning that much. But then when you actually look around, it's like, it seems to me most adults know a ton about their hobbies or random things that they wouldn't really consider education. And it's just like the speed with which people can pick that kind of stuff up. And sometimes it's a lot of memory stuff or like statistics or data that people just memorize, but because it's not in the context of a math class, you don't realize that you're doing it. It could be just like a bunch of guys watching NBA, and like if you ask them a random player, they will know their 3-point percentage, which is like, it's kind of weird when you think about it, especially because most of them wouldn't think they have that kind of ability. And people do it with like, I don't know, like you're learning histories like in depth, but it's about celebrities. It's not about world wars or something. And I'm not really applying like a value judgment. I'm just saying that's an example of like informal education that maybe we can be a bit more intentional with to complement formal education or something like that.
No, that's awesome. Everyone's bringing it today. I like I'm super impressed with everything you two are saying. But yeah, I agree. I think when I realized that, like, obviously we learn about things we're more passionate about faster and more readily. And when that clicked, I feel like my life changed. I was like, I can learn anything I want.
You
But like the keyword being that I want.
Yeah.
I think it, like, in university, because there were so many courses that I didn't like, I was like, oh, I'm like not as good of a learner anymore. But it's like, no, you just don't really care about accounting that much.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, mine was similar. I was like, and my first thought was that we're always kind of informal learning, and that already ties to formal education vis-a-vis like group projects, or if you're going to a protest like on the weekend that's related to I guess a subject that you're learning about in university or in high school. I think in a lot of ways they're like intertwined already, but they're not valued the same, because it's so, like you're kind of saying, impossible to judge how much informal knowledge someone has about basketball or pop culture, and we just don't value that as something good to know compared to accounting. But I think they're already complementing each other. We're just not putting enough like maybe external validation on informal learning.
Yeah.
That's my inclination.
Or in the formal setting, not giving any outlet for people to like express what they learned at home.
Yeah.
I think we fear putting those things in place, perhaps because it might lead to like inequality, because some students might not have the same opportunities. But even just from the point of view of learning, like as an adult, you can put those things in place of like maybe reflecting on how you're spending your time or setting intentions with it. I feel like doing the podcast is really helpful because we every week have questions that we have to ask, and then like we choose kind of where we want to direct our.
It's true. I think this is it's a good case study of how we've kind of tried to artificially formalize what is usually informal stuff. It's usually just us reading or like watching movies or talking to people, and then we've tried to kind of direct it. I also saw this axis on Google Images, if I'm allowed to cite Google Images. It was my favorite website, actually. Because there was like on the left and on the horizontal axis, it was formal and informal, and then up and down it was unexpected and expected, or like unintentional and intentional. And so I thought those 4 different quadrants is kind of a neat way. And social media was in one of them, because that's like you're learning about stuff, but you might not really want to be learning about it. But it's kind of unintentional.
It's like so concise. I spent like hours thinking about how to put what I was feeling in like a concise way, but obviously I should have just gone to Google Images.
You should always go to, I say that very often, like Google Images.
It's your favorite shopping website, I know that.
Yeah, I shop on Google Images. It makes me sound like I'm like in 2007 or something like that.
Shopping for on Google Images.
Like if I want like, oh, I want a pair of pants that looks like this, they're like blue and wide-legged or something.
Whoa.
I'll go to Google Images and find the pictures I like, and then go to the websites through there.
Which that's great.
It sounds weirdly dated, but it
it's
works
just
well.
like male Pinterest.
Yeah.
Not to gender Pinterest, but you know. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great grid. I've been in school and done 4 classes, and no one's ever showed me that. I don't know if this relates, but I would like to talk about it because I feel like...
Bring it up.
Okay. I was at a seminar, and the professor brought it up in their talk as well, and like the best way to learn about a system is to try to change it.
Okay. Cool.
And that's cited by a lot of people, and one of the quotes that I found was from Donella H. Meadows, and she's pretty big in like this kind of transformative learning for sustainability space, which a lot of my lab talks about. And I just really don't think in any sustainability education that I've had, we give enough weight to that kind of concept. I think there's some projects here and there, but a lot of it is like outside of formal curricula. But I've really found that to be true. And so if we're like a university, it's a place to learn the best way, or like the best place to learn, it should be like way more experiential, way more hands-on than it currently is. If a university claims to say that this is the best place to learn about sustainability.
Did you have any example of that when you did sustainability as a program?
Yeah, when you just said that, my brain was like, wow, like I haven't heard that, but super true. Like last night, I was trying to explain to someone what sustainability was in like an educational setting. Because it's like for those of us who were in it, it's just like, yeah, I studied sustainability, like obviously. But I was like, you know, like the environment. I was like, but it's not the environment. And I was trying to explain it, and then I basically reached this point where I was like, it was about learning about why the systems are how they are so that we can change them, and the history of how they got to this point. And like that's what university can enable you to do to a certain point of like, this is colonialism, this is like all the different types of oppression that you might not even be aware of.
Even the hard like sciences are always brushing up against like you're learning about what they don't know in math and physics and stuff like that. Like you're always brushing up against those limits of like our understanding of those kind of things.
Yeah, but then once you actually get into the field, and like for me, I was in this like entrepreneurial business club, and we basically had to try and start a business.
Yeah.
And it was like, I knew about all these concepts, but then when you go out and you're touring, like we were going to produce a food product, so we toured this like social enterprise where they employ people who have like barriers to employment, and it's like you're meeting the people who like had this idea in the first place of like, why don't we pay people who have barriers to employment a living wage to like, and then we just bring opportunities to them. And it can kind of be like they didn't just make food there, they did some clothing products, and they did some like just services. And it was really, when you're in the field and you actually see it, you see what's going right and like how people are responding to those systems of oppression, but also what can be improved on. So it was really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think that those opportunities don't exist, but they often come at the detriment to the learner, I find, in formal education settings. So you have to now like miss an assignment because you're part of this club, or you want to go to a protest, or you want to start your own like project. It always, I think, means you have to sacrifice something that formal education like asks you to do. So finding a way I think in the Solacene, those things are way more intertwined and designed better, and like for the learner to have space for both of those things.
I do remember something that we came up with during the education semester was fewer kind of report cards and more like
portfolio.
Yeah, and more portfolios that you come up with by the end of your class, and that's like your final project kind of. So it could consist of those kind of extracurricular things, and they're kind of validated by being included in that, I guess.
Yeah, I forget where I was going to talk about this, but somebody in my lab did that for her class. Like she was a teacher, for an education, it's called 21st Century Learning. And the students like came up with a portfolio, and everyone had their own rubric. Like the student would make their own rubric. And then at the end of the semester, be like, did I do the things that I wanted to do, and measure themselves. Cool. And it's such a small, like, we don't think about assessment as that, like, revolutionary or flashy or cool, but it plays such a huge role in, like, your relationship to learning in the future when you're, like, kind of in charge of it.
And I think it's still guided, because the teacher could still, for instance, help them come up with the rubric and make sure it's to a standard, that it's a worthwhile project, but
I forgot about this, but in the IB program, they do, like, you have all your courses, but then there's, like, this other thing where you have to do, like, movement, service, like, you have to do all these other things, and it's, like, graded, and at the beginning you set your goals. So I remember setting, like, I want to run 5K, and that was, like, a part of, like, if I didn't achieve that, but if I didn't try to and, like, write a reflection on, like, the process.
Look at you now.
Like, oh my god, did you do your half marathon? How was it? Do you want to talk about it? I feel like that's part of...
I don't know how Solacene is.
I think that's why you mentioned it. Just
I was saying it, then I was like, I guess it did serve me kind of well.
Yeah.
But I also remember I set the intention, like, when I was in high school, I did a lot of ballet, like an insane amount. And like one of my goals was like be in this many productions. And then I ended up dropping out of ballet like altogether in grade 12 because of like social things, because it was not a good environment. But then like in the reflection, I was like, had I not been reflecting on this every week, I wouldn't have realized that it was a really toxic environment. Like it was like really cool that there was a formalized way of me like, reflecting on these extracurricular things that otherwise up until the 10th grade had zero value academically. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can get something out of it. Cool. But yeah, the half marathon went well. I think today's my first day that I don't feel horrible in my legs. Like, I was walking very strange for like a week.
Wow, that's awesome though, you did that.
Thanks.
I mean, like what, 21K?
21K.
Not a joke?
No.
Wow.
I had another question that kind of came from that. So if you're defining sustainability, at least a little bit in terms of the way that it seeks to deconstruct things, do you think in the Solacene there is a sustainability program?
Ooh.
Or is it just an ethic that the students already have going into school? Or does it just shift what it focuses on? You know what I mean?
I feel like it would still exist. Maybe it would just be...
I don't know. I think when I think of the Solacene, to me, it feels close-ish. And I think we'll still have to be kind of grappling with these systems. It's not like in the Solacene all the systems are perfect. So
yeah, and you'll want to teach people the history. Like
that's true. You'd have to learn about things that were not good. So I guess it could be called unsustainability. That's what you're learning about.
Yeah.
Part C of the episode. Question C.
C.
Cool techniques to help students better connect with the material.
Okay. I feel like we've been like touching on this.
Yeah.
Throughout. But any synthesized...
I mean, I think maybe this is where I thought about the personalized rubrics and portfolios. I think that was a good addition. But this is what I had least written for it. But I also wrote down place-based learning is what they call it in the literature, I guess. But just learning outside, I think really helps people connect with the material and just being calmer. That was the other thing I wrote. I think there's techniques that are good for our nervous systems. In the Solacene, we use those in the classroom because I think a lot of the techniques that are used are not good for our nervous systems. And that really plays a huge role in how you connect to the material and learn. So
such a good point.
I don't know.
The environment that you're learning in?
Yeah.
The fluoride's coming. The fluoride's coming. On this big car hiding at the back of the classroom.
Yeah.
I liked fluoride.
Yeah, I was excited as well.
It tasted good. The root beer flavor?
Wait.
No, I don't like that. But every few...
What is fluoride?
You didn't
fluoride.
Put fluoride in Vancouver?
Like at the dentist's office?
No, in the classroom.
What?
Yeah.
You guys were eating fluoride?
They would wheel it in small little shot glasses. They would have a cart wheel it around.
They were literally feeding you fluoride?
Well, you didn't eat it, but yeah. Swished it and then poured it out. And then
every day?
Once a week?
Once a week, I think.
What?
And once a week they would give a toothbrush to a different kid.
Oh, but maybe that's just for teeth. That's just for teeth health, right?
No, it is, but it's just funny because it sounds so kind of culty and
horrible.
Indoctrination. But it's about how from a young age the classroom is not necessarily the most the place that you look forward to being.
No.
Do you remember how thrilled you'd be when they would say we're doing class outside in the afternoon or something?
Yeah.
Just so exciting.
And
it never happened.
No, and I tried to do that. There was a day in class last semester where everyone was just feeling yucky, and I was like, can we just go outside instead? And even though it was cold, I feel like that helped. And it's just...
It does.
So simple. What are we doing? I know it's Montreal and it's -40 half the year, so that's what we're doing.
That's exactly what we're doing. But this, the rooms can even just be designed better to not make you feel like you're in a dungeon. I don't know about McGill, but half our courses at Dalhousie University were they were in dungeons basically. They're 6 floors underground.
Yeah, but there was something cool about that though. There was something cool.
It.
But there was also at Dal there was one lecture hall that we specifically called the nice room. Because there was one main arts building where you walked in and then you turned left, there was a nice room. You you turn right, there was the bad room. And it's like, every week we'd be like hoping we're in the nice room.
Because there was space, it was really bright and airy, it was curved.
Yeah, it was curved. Curves are cool.
Very nice.
But it made you learn better, because I guess just the environment.
I have a friend who recently got engaged in a classroom at Dalhousie. They went back to like the place where they met, which was just like, I think it was the nice room.
Wow.
And then he was like, I'm gonna propose in the nice room.
Cute.
So that was cute.
That's really cute.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't proposed to in a lecture hall though, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Maybe if there were candles around. Some rose petals.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe. Spice it up a little.
Spice it up. Yeah, what did you guys say? Because I'm curious what you think are cool techniques.
I had 3 answers, none of which really answered the question at all.
Good.
But they were just like things that I wrote about. And one was, like you just said, like the kind of just the aesthetic of learning. It sounds a little bit shallow or vain, but I think people these days are really conscious about how they look and how their desk looks when they're studying and that kind of stuff. And I just think that can be leveraged to actually making it more memorable and making people want to do it a bit more. I'm thinking about how at the start of, or before each school year, we used to go to like back to school shopping, and it was always low-key kind of exciting to get new notebooks and kind of design what your school year would look like. And the second thing I came up with was teaching, which is obviously very like incredibly broad and also not very like universalizable, but I just noted that when teachers kind of give a toot about the class and the people in it and what they're teaching, students pick up on that really quickly, I think. And when the teacher is just kind of going through the motions, like let's say they've been there for like 30 years teaching the same class, I just think it transmits to the students and they don't really care about it either. I think about like the best teachers I've had, have felt enthusiastic about the subject, even if like logically if they've been doing it for like a decade, they're probably not that enthusiastic anymore, but or they find a new way of saying things, or they're bringing in new examples. And I don't know how you try and provoke this in the Solacene. Maybe, I mean, teachers are probably overworked now, so they probably don't get enough time to shape their curriculum and how they want to. Or maybe some teachers spend too long teaching the same stuff. I don't really know. I haven't looked into that, but yeah, I just think teaching, which is not really an answer at all, but I guess that's my
maybe passion, enthusiasm.
Sure, enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I thought about was fun, and I do think these are really novel. But I do think like fun is kind of overrated in education a bit, because I actually think it's quite rare that you can take a lesson and make some kind of like dodgeball exercise that's relevant and isn't kind of wasting everybody's time. And I also think the students can kind of, like, I remember feeling it myself and also talking about it with other classmates, even in like middle school, when it felt like the teacher was just kind of forcing something that wasn't actually fun, and you'd almost rather they just be saying it straight a bit more. I just think a lot of material is kind of dry, but if the teaching is good, then you don't necessarily need to try and make a game of it, anything like that. But I mean, when those games are like relevant, I think they help a lot. Like I have examples, like I remember when my calculus teacher was teaching us about limits, limits. And he did so by like miming his distance from like something else, and he'd be like, see, every time I'm getting halfway closer, but I'm never quite touching it. So he was using actual like objects, and that made it stick in my mind. Or when one of my teachers in like environmental science was telling us about ocean acidification, and she was using her breath through a straw to like change the acidity of just like a cup of water. It was like that sticks in my mind a lot, like those kind of visual or like tactile examples. But I just think generally there isn't one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think when they are there, they're good to kind of commit to, which I guess is also not an answer at all, but that's my third spiel.
Thoughts. I didn't concretely answer this because I feel like a lot of them are like obvious that I was thinking of just like, yeah, student-led learning and engaging the kids a bit more. But the only creative thing that I could come up with to myself was like, as an adult learner, as someone who's like not in a academic setting, I find it really valuable to still set myself like a syllabus for just like maybe a 3-month period or something. Because if I just set a goal of like learn French, like you can't, there's just nowhere, like no steps to take. But I've found like whenever I have a goal like that, the best way for me to do it is like break it down in maybe like a 3-month thing of like, in these 3 months I would like to complete this one program, read this one book, listen to this many things, and then like I don't need to formally reflect on it. I've tried that with like, we're both trying to read through an author, and so I'm trying to read through Hemingway, and my goal was to write an essay after every book. But I genuinely just don't have time to read a Hemingway book, write a reflection and an essay, especially as an adult.
That's the kind of thing that's just kind of a holdover from the school system where you feel like I should do this. But really, if you are yourself thinking about it and you'll talk to me about the books and you'll say the things that you would otherwise have to spend like 2 hours writing 1,000 words, like you don't necessarily, because there's no one to hand it into.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be that formal writing an essay. So like I thought that might be helpful because I also wanted to practice writing, but then I was like, no, that's not something I really want. But what I do really want is to read these books, and the best way for me to do it is to say, okay, I'm going to read 30 pages every day for a month, then I'll get through this one, and 3 short stories or whatever. And it's like, it's simple, but I think if you like have the actionable goals, it helps. It really helps achieve those bigger goals, and I feel like it helps it stick better than if you're just like, oh, once a month when I feel a whim to like study this thing, it's not really going to stick unless it's kind of like structured a little bit. And structure doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but for me, structure is like very helpful, and I try to not shy away from it just because it is like kind of weird to like give yourself such a structure as an adult with no like not working towards anything specifically, and it's just like for fun.
Yeah. I don't know, I feel like I'm such an opposite person where I feel like sometimes structure makes me like not want to do the thing because I'm like, rah, like don't tell me what to do even if it's me, but it is like a really helpful tool for connecting, like back to the question, like connecting to the material, because then you're actually like setting out some sort of like intentionality that you normally don't get to do, like even in university. You're not like connected to the material necessarily before, it's kind of just handed to you. So maybe if you're making your own syllabus, you can kind of like get that familiarity with it.
Yeah, maybe like connecting the things in your life a little bit. This is something we often like work in silos, especially as adults. It's like, this is my job, this is my hobby, this is my what I'm having for supper. But I feel like maybe if you're connecting them a little bit more, of just like, I don't know, just trying to make connections between your life and what you're studying and what you're like living, can be helpful for me to like, for it to stick. Like when we watch movies, I often connect them to like what I'm reading, or even just like what we're doing with Solacene. And I find that's always made, like all the movies we've watched in the last few years, I've remembered, like there's hundreds of films we've watched, but I remember them all and remember weird facts about them because I like researched a little bit afterwards. But every movie I watched before, like moving to Montreal, I feel like none of them really stuck with me because I just would like, watching movies was like very passive. But then I was like, oh, I'm doing this almost every day, I might as well like get something out of it, not to like be like you need to monetize your hobbies, but just like get something out of it as a human. Like intellectually.
Yeah, so you remember it, basically.
Yeah.
It's not kind of lost.
Exactly. Okay, the final question, which is a very big question. It might require more time than we have. But I feel like when I met you, you made me, you didn't force me and like sit me down, but like the way that you talk about climate is very like interdisciplinary in like an artistic way. And I never realized how valuable art was to me until like we've started talking about it and seeing your work, which is, you might have not known that, but like it brought it out of me. It's like it's always been there, but I just was like, oh, this is basically why I care about the environment, is like because of what will be lost with climate change, in the sense of like all the art that I love, like all the pastoral images or like films, like everything comes from nature. Like culture comes from nature, music does, everything. And if it's gone, and if it's like just all concrete roads, we only have one song left. And it's from the heart. But yeah, so what is the connection between art and climate action, or art and climate?
Whoa. Yeah, I mean, I can start.
Go for it.
I don't know, I think there's like kind of a cliche, not a cliche, there's a lot of, I think now, discussion about what the connection is, but what I wanted to talk about, the first thing that came to mind is like the process, and maybe that's kind of why I brought it out on you. I don't know, that's really nice. I didn't know I did that. But I don't know, I think the process between like art and climate action are so similar, and I don't know, this was actually pretty well thought out, so I might just have to read it. Like in art, I think there are like lineages of art, like different mediums of art, and I think the same with like climate action. There's kind of like lineages of like the kind of climate action that you do, but then you always still have to like adapt it to the current moment. Like, yes, you're a painter, but then you always have to paint like the single kind of painting or the single kind of like climate art piece. So that's my first point.
That's super cool.
And part of the process, yeah. And then also just like, I don't know, I think art is so personal and individual, but it still has to kind of like touch the collective, and like what makes a good art is that like a large amount of people kind of like related to it. And I think the same goes with climate action, maybe less, not like a measurement of success of, you know, is this act better or not, depending on how many people like liked it, but just that it should be like helpful and nice and like good for you to do, but also that it's like making some sort of broader impact. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like the process to me has been so similar, but I don't know, like I haven't really heard much about other people, but I think you guys do that too. Like I think Solacene, the process of it to me is pretty like artistic.
Yeah, this is what I'm like. I think once I've heard you talk about art and climate so many times now, I feel like, yeah, I realized that, and I've recently been trying to Google like climate art like projects, and there aren't many, and I'm surprised, and I hope it'll be a bit of a movement going forward, and not just like people painting about the climate, but just like, yeah, this artistic integration of like art as a coping mechanism or as a tool for like scientific communication or for...
It also just might not be named such.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every biological drawing is kind of a climate art in terms of what you're talking about, like things being lost. And also I like the mention of process, because there's also that angle, like if it's a simple, like let's just take the example of someone painting a landscape, like in the process of doing so they're probably learning quite a bit about the landscape. Not just how it looks, but what kind of trees there are there, or like, I don't know, what like fish go down the river or something like that. Like they're kind of picking up things that they might ordinarily have just disregarded. That being said, my answer to this makes me sound really horrid.
Oh no.
Because the first thing that came to my mind was playing devil's advocate, like, do we have too many people now who are just like, just try to raise awareness? And I'm talking a bit about myself. Something I wrote was, make climate art, ? How about you make a wind turbine? Or something. There's a sense of like,
no,
maybe there's too many of us or something like that. I don't know. I don't really think that, but it's just something that crosses my mind. It sounds a little bit like when people rail against like liberal arts degrees and how they don't deserve to have jobs and that kind of stuff, but it's just, yeah, it's on my mind. But like, to answer the question, the thing that I think the single like event that made me care about the environment at all and climate change, because I was never really that outdoorsy growing up, but there was a Disney documentary that I think was just called Earth. It wasn't the Planet Earth like TV show, but it was in cinemas. Do you know about that? Did you remember that?
I remember.
And it was like this thing like, oh, every ticket they sell, they're going to plant a tree or something. And I remember dragging my parents to go see it with me. I think it was in IMAX. I think it might have been the first like IMAX movie I ever saw. And it was very like polar bear, like sad polar bear cub with the melting ice, and it was kind of, I guess, manipulative like that, or very Hollywood. But stories, they really work like that because they can devastate you or they can inspire you. And obviously now I kind of see the irony in it being like a big Disney production, but it not being probably the best intentioned like film. But yeah, I think those kind of tools are super helpful in terms of like recruiting recruiting young kids who are looking for like a cause. What do you say?
Babe.
Yeah, is
Think
that?
about how many people probably went vegetarian after watching that movie.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Not me, but yeah.
No, yeah.
Generally speaking.
But I feel like it's more it's less obvious than just the planet Earth and like the Super Size Me's, like those documentaries
Yeah.
about like how the fast food industry is bad or
Of
how
course.
like meat production is bad. It's just a story about a pig.
Yeah.
But then you're like, and then it makes you like care about animal rights and stuff, and you're
Oh.
like, can they think?
Makes you care about animals.
Exactly. I just think, I don't know, people don't necessarily relate to like statistics, I think, or tables, or like even all of the images of melting ice caps we're getting tired of. So we need to be a bit more subversive in like changing the masses. And
Yeah.
that's what climate artists do, and like that's a big relationship between climate and art, is like trying to be subversive and change the masses like subconsciously, instead of just like being like, yeah, you can go build a wind turbine, which will help a lot. Like I think lots of people need to do that as well, but it's like if you can write a story that changes 1,000 people's daily practices, like that's equally as important.
Yeah, but I also think, as you said about getting tired of the polar bear image, like a lot of people associate probably climate art with one feeling or one type of feeling, which is negativity or sadness or fear, but it could be beautiful, sustainable, and tactile, and it could rouse people rather than kind of depressing them. Maybe like that. So yeah, I wrote the poem to close the episode. It's not very good. It was inspired by Pinocchio, which is one of my favorite stories, and when he's on the way to school, and the fox comes and distracts him.
Yeah.
And takes him to Pleasure Island. So it's kind of a...
Brace yourself.
The poem says, "What did I find hidden in the screeching chalk? Formulas and integers, so otherwise kept, muted by carnivals, that just as I longed amidst the attractions to walk, so with I they yearned to talk. Use us, they said. It's never been easier. Then I ate 3 corn dogs, some candy and kettle corn, pop, and have never felt queasier."
Okay.
Lovely.
Thanks for listening. We will link VANJA's Instagram if you want to follow along to her projects below, and you'll always see updates from us on our Instagram and stuff. So thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Thanks for having me. That was so fun.